It's my pleasure this morning to introduce someone who many of you met yesterday, a man with 3 decades of experience in banking, in international banking, management, and public service. It's our good friend and the president and CEO of Accion International, Michael Schlein. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming to Fortaleza, Brazil, to the Responsible Finance Forum. I know many of you traveled long distances, and some of you had particularly difficult 50-plus hours, 30-plus hour trips. So thank you for making the journey. I hope you find that it'll be worthwhile. Let me start by thanking the Central Bank of Brazil, who really went over the top in helping us create this event. We've worked closely with, over the last several months, the whole Central Bank of Brazil staff, but particularly Luis Mansour, Diogo Cruz, Ronaldo Vera da Silva. Thank you very much. And shortly you will hear from Carolina Baruch, representing the Central Bank of Brazil. She will be speaking to you momentarily. So thank you all. And let me thank the chair and the co-chair of the Global Partnership for Financial Inclusion, Magda Bianco and Chanchal Surkar. Thank you for you are champions of financial inclusion and your leadership all during the year, but also in making GPFI and making this event such a success. We are excited that this year's Responsible Finance Forum is an official side event to the G20's Global Partnership for Financial Inclusion. This particular meeting of GPFI focused on moving beyond access and emphasizing outcomes and financial well-being and last mile quality, and you're going to hear those themes discussed further today. And thank you to all the RFF Advisory Council members for your guidance in creating this agenda and creating this forum. This is a collaborative event and we wouldn't be here without all of you. Today, the global financial system fails to serve 2 billion people. 2 billion people are left out of and poorly served by the global financial system. They are invisible to it and it is invisible to them. And their lives are much harder than they have to be because they are invisible to the system. Imagine, just for a minute, imagine if you could reach them and give them the basic tools to help them save, protect their family, manage their day-to-day lives, and grow their businesses. Imagine if 2 billion people could put a little bit more food on the table, educate their children, have some protection from life's storms, both literal and figurative. The world would be better. We can do this, we must do this, and we must do this with urgency. The people in this room are critical to making that vision a reality. This is an extraordinary moment in human history. Over the last several decades, we've seen, and many of you have helped create, the greatest reduction in poverty ever in human history. Over the last several decades, we've seen hundreds of millions of people escape poverty. But today, for the first time in any of our lifetimes, the progress is being reversed. Poverty and inequality are increasing, prices are rising, and many people are being forced to leave their home in search of security. All of this is exacerbated by climate change, instability, and conflict. Here in Latin America, poverty remains above pre-pandemic levels, with vulnerable groups, particularly smallholder farmers, small businesses, and women, most affected. And many governments around the world are stretched thin with high debt levels and high interest rates. They may not have the resources to help support the most vulnerable people in their societies. Now, at the same time, over the last decade, we have seen, and again, many of the people in this room have played important roles, we've seen an enormous acceleration of innovation and digitization. We have new tools to reach all those people who have been left out. For example, in response to the pandemic, 166 countries initiated more than 400 cash transfer programs reaching over 1.1 billion people. And for the most This was the first time they switched from cash to digital. This digital infrastructure is the foundation on which we can build a more inclusive world. In the past decade, more than 1 billion people joined the global financial system. In developing economies, we went from 42% of adults having access a decade ago to 71% today. That is remarkable progress. Now put these two ideas together. For the first time in our lives, poverty is on the rise. But also, for the first time, we have extraordinary new tools that will allow us to reach, serve, and help those who have been left out for much too long. We need to seize this moment. We need to seize this moment with urgency. We need to redouble our efforts to build a responsible, competitive, innovative, and inclusive financial system. A system that can work for everyone. And that is what the Responsible Finance Forum is all about. And there is no better place and no better time to be discussing the future of financial inclusion than right here, right now in Brazil. Over the past decade, Brazil has become truly a role model for the world. A decade ago, 64% of Brazilian adults had access to the banking system. Today, CGAP says that number might be as high as 96%. That is incredible progress. A decade ago, 5 traditional banks controlled 80% of the Brazilian financial system. Millions were excluded, and clients faced poor service and high fees. In 2010, the Central Bank of Brazil became responsible for the payments industry and pushed for greater competition and innovation. Fintechs like Nubank, Creditas, Neon have helped revolutionize access to financial services. And Brazil embraced open finance that allowed financial service providers to more easily access and exchange data and provide consumers with better choices. The PIX system now accounts for 1/3 of all Brazilian transactions. It's used by millions of small businesses every day. It is the fastest growing payment system in the world. Why? It's free, it's fast, it's reliable. People pay nothing and merchants pay just 1/3 of 1% per transaction, which is a fraction of the cost for debit or credit cards. On average, a PIX transaction takes about 3 seconds to complete compared to 2 days for a debit card or 28 days for a credit card transaction. And now also the central bank is working on DREX, a central bank digital currency that has the potential to lower costs even further. We are thrilled to be here and to learn about what's working and also what needs to work better. Brazil has emerged as a leader in the world by taking meaningful steps toward creating a responsible, competitive, innovative, and inclusive financial system. These are the key themes for this conference and for this movement. That's our path forward. If we can create an environment for financial services that truly is responsible, competitive, innovative, and inclusive, that is how we will create an economy that works for everyone. And for Accion, Brazil holds a very special place in our history. In the early 1970s, Accion staff made some of the very first microloans in the world in Recife. We were working here in Brazil. Dr. Yunus was working in Bangladesh. Others were working in Southeast Asia. These were the earliest experiments in microcredit, and they helped to shatter the myth that people living in poverty were bad credit risks. We've come a long way since then. If you don't know us, Accion is a global nonprofit committed to building a fair and inclusive economy, one that truly works for all. Started in 1961, we support innovative companies all over the world that are harnessing digital technologies, from artificial intelligence to mobile money to satellite imagery, to all deliver faster, cheaper, better, safer financial solutions for the 2 billion people who today remain left out and poorly served. We invest, we advise, and we research. Today, Accion is among the leaders in the world in early stage venture capital investing in fintech for inclusion. And last month, we announced a new $150 million fund to help accelerate digital transformation for existing financial service providers. And we have a team of consultants who help those financial service providers to digitally transform and expand who they can reach and who they can serve. Over our history, we have helped to build 235 financial service providers in 75 countries that today are reaching hundreds of millions of people who would otherwise be left out. And we are very proud to house and support the Center for Financial Inclusion, an independent think tank that conducts rigorous research, builds strong partnerships, tests emerging solutions, advocates for evidence-based change, and convenes thought leaders like all of you here today. Let me show you a short video featuring some of our clients in India to show you the impact of our work.
घर में असुविधा होने लगा, खेती करने नहीं सके हम लोग, पैसा नहीं था, नहीं करने सके, इसलिए लोन लेने की जरूरत पड़ा कि हम खेती भी करते हैं, आम के सीजन में आम का भी बिजनेस करते हैं, लोन लेकर के माने काम करने लगे। यहाँ से हम लोग को पैदल जाना पड़ता था, उसके बाद में फिर नाव के लिए आधा घंटा 1 घंटा इंतजार करना पड़ता था, बहुत असुविधा होता था। हाँ, नदी पार करके जाना पड़ता है, वहाँ जा कर के हम लोग ऑफिस में जाके पैसा जमा कर देते थे।
दूर से लाना पड़ता था, एटीएम से उठा के लाना पड़ता था, फिर रास्ते में लोग छीन लेते थे, तो बहुत लेडीज ले जाना नहीं चाहता था कि हम नहीं जाएंगे।
हमें फिनकेयर के द्वारा ट्रेनिंग मिली, बताया गया कि ऐसे स्कैन करके आप पैसा पे कर सकते हैं, फ़ोन पे में जाके स्कैनर से या लोन आईडी से भी पे कर सकते हैं पैसा, कि अभी घर पे बैठे ही हम लोग ऑनलाइन पेमेंट कर लेते हैं।
अब क्या है, ऑनलाइन पेमेंट कर देते हैं तो थोड़ा सुविधा हो गया है कि हर चीज़ में हम लोग को अब ये हो रहा है कि नहीं, हम लोग कुछ कर सकते हैं, आगे बढ़ सकते हैं।
हमारी वाइफ को ये नॉलेज भी बढ़ा है और भी 2-4-10 महिला जो भी है वो भी इसी तरह से यूज करते हैं, हाथ में हाथ मिला करके आगे की ओर बढ़ रही हैं, तो सपोर्ट हम लोग का भी देना जरूरी पड़ गया इसमें। घर खुशहाल है, बच्चों लोगों में कोई तनाव नहीं है, पति पत्नी में कोई तनाव नहीं है, हर चीज़ अब मिली जुली सरकार की तरह चल रहा है।
It's no secret to everyone in this room, today we are living through a digital revolution that is changing every aspect of our lives, and it has enormous consequences for how we can expand financial inclusion. Not long ago, distances to reach remote smallholder farmers were seen to be insurmountable. Today, there's no such thing as a distance that's insurmountable. Not long ago, the transaction sizes were seen to be too small to be commercially viable. Today, there's no such thing. It used to be that without face-to-face interaction, it would be hard to know your customer, hard to know her needs, but today with data analytics, we can know our clients remotely and really distances collapse. Innovations like artificial intelligence, data analytics, global satellite imagery, digital public infrastructure, open banking are radically changing the ways that we can reach and work with the underserved. If we can harness these advances, there's really no reason that we cannot create a truly inclusive world in our lifetimes. DPI is a theme you'll hear a lot about today. Governments around the world are seeing that a smart public investment pays off in many ways. Today, more than 50 countries are actively pursuing DPI. Now, why is this important? These are the digital rails. We can build on these rails and create solutions that provide working capital to help grow a small business, insurance to protect a farm from floods and droughts, savings to help educate a child, and more. And today we know that payments are one of the keys to unlock progress. We know that 4 out of 5 people who receive a digital payment also make a digital payment. And of that portion, of the people making payments, 40% of them save formally and 40% of them borrow formally. So payments are, in fact, the key to unlocking not just access, but also usage. This is an important point. These payment rails are the key to unlocking higher value financial services. And as more people go digital, the data they are creating allows us to see and serve people who until now have been invisible. Let me be clear, data by its nature is inclusive. Most people who've been left out don't have bad credit histories, they have no credit history. They have simply been invisible. Data is light. Data and the ability to analyze that data is allowing us to see and therefore include billions. Now, at the same time, new risks are emerging every day. Research by CFI and others show that the adoption of digital tools among micro and small businesses is not straightforward. Though many micro entrepreneurs started using digital channels to do business, some switched back to cash. We need to understand why. And on the one hand, we're thrilled to see governments invest in DPI, but how do we make sure that these systems are and remain consumer friendly? How do we make sure they're well governed and they protect consumer privacy? How do we make sure they have the resources to remain innovative for years to come? And after many years of no progress, the most recent Findex finally showed real progress in closing the gender gap in account ownership from 9% to 6% in emerging markets. But below the surface, it turns out that much of that progress was from India alone, and a large portion can be attributed to the closing of dormant accounts owned by men. Stubbornly, many countries continue to have double-digit gender gaps. Hundreds of millions of women remain shut out from financial services. Why can't we make more progress to close the gender gap everywhere? Those with limited digital and financial skills and literacy, especially women, often struggle to navigate complicated systems, and providers are wary of lending to consumers with limited data trails. This creates a vicious cycle that exacerbates exclusion. On the one hand, algorithms and AI are helping us reach and serve more people than ever, but they can also leave others out. A single biased loan officer can only affect so many people, but a single biased algorithm can be exponential in its impact. And as more providers rely on algorithms to decide who gets access to financial services and who does not get access, those with limited data trails are most vulnerable to unfair decisions. This is especially true for women who, through no fault of their own, often have incomplete data footprints. Let me give you an example. Many of the fintechs that we work with use algorithms that presume if you regularly recharge and top up your phone, you're probably more likely to repay your loan than a person who regularly runs out of money and power. All of that makes sense, except for one thing. Men have their own phones, and women have the family phone, which systematically runs out of money and power. We are creating algorithms that systematically discriminate against women. We need to do much better. And fraud and scams are on the rise. The Global Anti-Scam Alliance says that fraudsters stole more than $1 trillion from consumers last year. Around the world, we're seeing increasing sophistication among cyber criminals and fraudsters, and they're using generative AI and deep fakes to deceive providers and exploit customers. This has huge implications for our work because financially underserved people are the most vulnerable people in the world. We need to do all that we can to protect them. So what can we do? The essential challenge comes down to this. How do we leverage the digital revolution and maximize the benefits and yet minimize the potential harm? We must build a financial system that is responsible, competitive, innovative, and inclusive, one that truly uplifts and protects the most vulnerable among us. And it's only getting more complicated. It used to be that to get financial services, you needed to go to a financial service provider. But in the last few years, we've seen that the key to providing financial services is data. And it turns out almost every company is a data company. So in theory, every company can be a financial service provider. Now, this is a big deal. Ultimately, this may change who we can reach and how we reach them. Through embedded finance, we can give customers exactly what they need, exactly when they need it. This can help us bring millions more people into the global economy. But it also means that companies that know nothing about financial services are getting into the business of providing financial services to the most vulnerable people in the world. What could possibly go wrong with that? On the one hand, the potential is exciting. On the other hand, it's fraught and it's daunting. And as data becomes essential, algorithms cannot continue to be a black box. We need to understand their inputs, their coding, and their outcomes. Regulators must test and learn what works to ensure fair and responsible AI-driven tools. Teams designing and building algorithms should themselves be inclusive, and they should be trained in how to identify and mitigate algorithmic bias. And we must meet the clients where they are on their digital and financial journeys. If I told you tomorrow that I was going to pay you in cryptocurrency, you'd have some questions. You'd say, how does it work? Can I buy things with it? Who will accept it? How do I convert it to cash? Is this reliable? What are the risks? Well, that's exactly how it feels when we ask someone to move from cash to digital. There are real fears and valid concerns, and we need to understand that and help people work through these fears. And that means maintaining human touch when needed. Recently, we're seeing increasing convergence. Pure tech models are adding some touch and adding responsible friction. And more labor-intensive models are removing barriers through digital transformation. The lines are blurring. Through it all, we need to get to the right balance between tech and touch that helps clients build their knowledge, their skills, and ultimately trust. We all have essential roles to play. Investors can scale the most promising business models for the underserved while asking the right questions to ensure that solutions are truly responsible. Business leaders can prioritize clients with lower digital skills and create products that are specifically designed to improve their financial well-being. Digital innovators must think carefully about the impact of the new tools they are building. For example, this means responsibly collecting demographic data on clients and performing tests to see if algorithms are, in fact, discriminating. And innovation is not just for businesses. Regulators and policymakers need to show that they welcome change that is responsible. We're seeing great innovation in RegTech, but it's not easy for regulators to keep up and separate the good from the bad. Financial services is undergoing seismic shifts, and we must quickly evolve our work to make sure that we're maximizing the opportunities and minimizing the risks for the most vulnerable. And that's exactly why we're here. That's why the Responsible Finance Forum is such an important space for sharing, reflecting, learning, and looking ahead. We're all here today because we share a belief that we can learn from each other to build a financial system that in fact is responsible, competitive, innovative, and inclusive. Let me end by reiterating that the work you do is more important today than ever before. We have powerful tools at our disposal to create a better, more resilient, more inclusive world. And it's our job to help guide people on how to best use them. I believe that if we work together, we can seize this truly once-in-a-lifetime moment and help the world's most vulnerable people to truly benefit from the digital economy. Thank you.